Just let's share my screen. I got to
All
find
right.
the right one here. Okay.
So welcome. We've got a couple people, and hopefully a few more people will join us after they've gotten a sandwich or something. Thank you for taking your lunch break to join us, and for this month's Vancouver ACE event. We've got Jeffrey from Salto to talk a little bit more about best practices for DevOps with regards to managing your Jira instance. And afterwards, I'll be talking briefly about some of the big announcements that happened almost a month ago at Team 23. So, Jeffrey, the floor is yours.
All right. Now let me see how I do this here. Okay. Can you see my screen changing? Am I getting this right? Okay. Excellent. Yeah. Great. Thank you, Brendan. Welcome, everybody. So today we're going to talk about something that's happening in the business applications world that happened already in other parts of IT. And we're starting to find opportunities and practices that can enable this sort of DevOps approach in places where DevOps has yet to permeate very, very deeply. This is not me. This is Gil. So this deck is normally presented by Gil. Not normally, but he presented it the last time. Gil's our co-founder and CTO. He's based out of San Francisco. He and a few others founded the company in 2019. So pretty young, but old enough to be to have a product that we're actively selling and having success with in the market. We're based out of both Tel Aviv, where Gil was originally from, but now he's in San Francisco along with a few other folks. We've got a big office in Florida as well. But all of our developers are in Tel Aviv. We're up to about 70 employees now. We've got a lot of funding behind us. Gil and the other founding members came from two or three other exits that were highly successful. And so when they went to Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley and talked to the VC community, we found some great partners for launching Salto. All right, so the context for Salto is that companies these days are run on SaaS software. There's very little now that remains, which is installed on-prem. Jira data center aside, there is still plenty of that around, and we support that too. But the context is that there are sales and marketing and customer support and finance applications, most of which these days, at least for companies of not gigantic size, these are all delivered to the end users as a SaaS application. That was a really great development, but it did not diminish the need for managing those applications. And so the management of those applications is still challenging. The requirement for all of them is that you can't just use them out of the box. These things typically require a lot of customizations. Jira in particular has a significant amount of customization that is required in order to make it useful at any particular company. The challenges with this you're going to be familiar with, right? What's actually been implemented? Who made changes? Why did they make them? If you want to make a change, maybe we need to find out what impacts that might have before we make it, because we don't want to just cross our fingers and wait for the users to call us when something breaks. Jira is really bad at this habit too of developing things in production and maybe making a demo projects and developing things there, but really we're making changes in production and risking some of the actual production availability. Oftentimes when the teams get large, collaboration becomes really important. The sandboxes are not often used because promoting things reliably from a sandbox into production is usually a matter of rekeying those, which is error prone and not very fun to do. Sometimes you need to analyze what's already broken. I love our early. I'll jump ahead a little bit and say that our when I have the early conversations with customers who just signed on, one of the things I love about it is they say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know this was configured like that." So knowing what's actually already configured and how that stuff relates and how it's broken is very difficult to see. If we make a change, how do we roll that back? What about keeping a paper trail so that when the auditors come by and say, why was this particular change made? Can you prove to me that it was authorized to make that change? How do you do that? So those are all some challenges in managing business applications in a SaaS world. And in the software development and kind of core IT world, this was something that they tackled over the last 10 or 15 years with DevOps, and starting with that whole as code movement. Maybe not starting with it, but evolving into it through HashiCorp. I mean, it all started back with Chef and Puppet, and then HashiCorp came along and made Terraform, and so this idea that you can take configuration and make it into code, it was a really key discovery and practice that became important over the last 10 years or so. And we went from things that were manual and error prone, with silos and long delivery cycles, with infrequent releases, quality issues, and we transformed that. Right, we automated things with code, and represented them within things like within Git, such applications as that. And what we ended up with was fast releasing, creating more value more quickly with fewer defects. That was kind of the overall result of that. So this looks a lot like, if I don't know if you all remember the 12-factor application, but I really remember that was a key moment in Agile and DevOps, and really enabling that industry to transform itself. And they said, look, if you want to do things right, you need to manage everything in version control, including configuration. They said that back then about configuration of things like Kubernetes, but these days you need that same control and configuration as code in your SaaS applications, rollbacks, automations, etc. Static analysis of your configuration is something that becomes possible if you can represent your configuration as code. It becomes modular and composable, predictable, repeatable, etc. You can see the things on this slide. So as code was something that really transformed the way that the software development world worked, and we're now beginning to see the opportunities for new tools and practices that impact the configuration of SaaS applications. And we tried to coin a phrase and call this business engineering, right? So there are practices and tools that the DevOps world created in its transformation. Those tools and practices are not yet commonplace in business application management, and that's exactly what Salto is trying to do. So how do we achieve that? Textual representation of everything. Everything is code. I want to know how my Jira configuration looks. Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to transform that entire configuration into some lump of source code that I can now do a Control F on searching, Command F. Sorry, I'm actually a Mac guy. I'm not a PC guy, but Command F or Control F, whichever is your preference. Versioning that, now that I have something that's stored as text files, I can version that in a source code control system like Git, such as Git. I mean, it's nothing else but Git these days. All of the other version control systems have faded away. So Git, GitHub, Bitbucket, all those are great platforms for managing source code. And now we can do that with our source code that represents our configuration of Jira. We can look through the dependencies, analyze where changes might have impacts. If I'm going to change the list that exists in a dropdown, and I have other automations that depend on those dropdowns, I better understand, if I'm going to make a change to the dropdown, what automations use it in case I need to change those automations as well. And also just collaborating with the team. So one of the great things that happened in the it was really kind of brought on by Git, was this ability to communicate with each other through Git processes and collaborate, being able to work all on the same applications, looking at each of our own pieces, but then also collaborating together and understanding how all the changes fit together when we do a deployment. Again, back to Jira. The Jira community was never very good at using their sandboxes because the sandboxes were never very good, frankly. Sorry, Atlassian. They're fine, except that they don't allow you to do this movement of functionality except by rekeying it. And so sandboxes are a really valuable thing, and Atlassian provides those, but without a tool to give you the ability to recreate functionality without having to rekey it, something that makes it difficult to use those sandboxes. So having a ability to take changes, because their code now, I can make some changes, update the code in my sandbox, and then take those same changes and promote them up into production and implement them using something like Salto. Yeah, branches and pull requests. So if say I want to gate my promotion through pull requests, I can do that through, again, since I have Git now at my disposal, I can use the Git processes like pull requests to make sure that only certain kinds of changes get promoted into production, and only after they've been properly vetted by a community of reviewers. And then rollbacks as well. So being able to revert to something if it doesn't work as well as you want it to, reverting that, again, is just a matter of coming back to an older version of the code and deploying that older version, and that actually makes your configuration reflect the older version. And all of that is a kind of part of a process that enables you to have an ongoing list of changes, a paper trail for the auditors, if you like, through a list of Git commits. Okay, not only, this may or may not be interesting to you folks, but because it depends on the applications that are existing in your company. It also depends on the teams that manage those. But we're not Jira specific. We can actually manage any number of applications on the screen here, and we do it in exactly the same way. We translate all of the configurations into the same underlying configuration language. Now they look a little different because Jira has projects and NetSuite kind of doesn't really have projects. But the overall practice and the tools are the same. So you can apply these same practices to across your organization. So you only have to have one way to think about the development of all of your SaaS applications, and that can do really good things for scaling up the IT shop, and being able to have a single set of practices for multiple applications. And you can have some experts on the practice that way too. All right. Any questions so far? Now that since we're all on the same line together, feel free to pepper me with some questions. I'm going to show you some examples in a minute. Silence is fine.
Sorry, just one question would be around. So you have the support different platforms. Are they all differently licensed?
Oh, that's a great question. Not really. So every time we connect to a particular instance of a SaaS application, we call that an environment. So we'll connect to your production and your sandbox environment for Jira. That's 2 environments. If you wanted to also connect to NetSuite, a production and a sandbox, that's 2 more environments for a total of 4. We don't care what kind of environments those are. You just need to buy the per environment costs, and then we actually, from the way we invoice, is just on a per user, like per Salto user basis. I think we're going through some adjustments of how we do our pricing models, but that's all up on the Salto website. So did I answer the question properly there, Brendan?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right, cool. So first thing, representing everything as code. The first thing we do when we connect to a Jira instance is we do something called a fetch. And a fetch basically connects to a Jira or NetSuite or whatever and asks it a million questions about how it's configured. So in this case, you can see we get responses to things like boards and dashboards and fields and groups and projects and workflows and all those things that you might expect in a Jira configuration. We capture all of those things by asking the Jira API. And then we convert it into this language we call it the Salto configuration language. It's based on the same configuration language as Terraform from HashiCorp. So it's kind of an underlying industry standard. We modified it a little bit to handle business applications, and we call it the Salto configuration language, which we abbreviate as NACL. So you'll see here the one little the top of the code there. You can see it says align our.nacl. So we call those NACL files. And if you see our website, you'll see our mascot. His name is Knuckles. So That's kind of the history of the Salto lore. Oh, and also NaCl is salt, right? So that all kind of fits together. But what we do then is when we get those answers from the API, we translate that into these configuration files. And so now I'm storing the configuration, in this case, of a board as a bunch of text, which is great. We can describe fully and declaratively. We describe declaratively exactly what this board should look like. And so if we ever wanted to see how it's configured, we just have to look at the NACL files. And then if we wanted to deploy that, we could actually make small changes to these NACL files and redeploy those. Or I can compare them from one environment to the next and deploy and take changes from one environment and push them into the other environment through copying of NACL file chunks. We can also layer on top of that a nice friendly way to look at those files. If you're not comfortable looking at NACL files, that's cool. We can take that same element and look at it as a something a bit more friendly. And we can see right on this screen as well that it depends on, that this particular board depends on a filter, some statuses, and looks like one project if my eyes serve me well here. So we can actually see how a particular element looks either through the raw underlying text NACL files, or we can have this nice friendly view on top. And we can see, let's see here. Oh yeah, you can see the underlying the statuses and the columns and such. You'll see that these that there's 4 columns in this particular board, and you can see what those are there. And you can move them around. You can change their names. You can have them. You can add them and delete them. That's all possible within the NACL world. I mentioned before, we can see that these things depend on certain other elements. So if I have an approvers field, you can see it's used by a couple of things there, a field configuration and some screens. It's got a context as a child object, and it further depends on the actual custom field context as well. Once I'm doing these fetches, we tend to do fetches once a day. That's pretty typical, but also manually, I can initiate a fetch. They take, in Jira, they take anywhere from 1 or 2 minutes to 5 or 10 minutes, depending on how big and complex the Jira configuration is. When we do a fetch, we actually can see what changed between the last fetch and this fetch. And when we do that, we can compare that to a pattern and send notifications based on that matching. So in this case, we have a pattern that says if you're matching, if an automation changes, then send a Slack message to Gil's tracker notification channel. So we can set up any number of notifications that allow you to monitor changes. Third parties are great. It's great to monitor third parties this way. It's good to have an ongoing audit trail of just every single change that ever happens. We can monitor that in a Slack channel, for example. So there's all kinds of ways you can use monitoring. And then comparing as well. So here's where it gets really powerful. I've got a UAT environment and a production environment. Can you guys see my mouse? When I move my mouse, are you able to see that?
Yep.
Okay, good. So when up here, we can see that I've got a source environment, which is my UAT, and a target environment, which is the production environment. And I'm comparing these two. So what I'm seeing here, these are 5,000 differences between the two. That's a lot of differences. So I can see what's different in terms of additions, modifications, and deletions. And I can say, all right, when I compare these, I actually want to select some of them for promotion. Let's see where we go here. Okay, hold on. No, okay. So we're seeing here, I'm selecting these elements for promotion. If I put a check mark in any of these boxes, it will allow me to actually promote that change. So in this case, I can change the assignee type from component lead to project default by selecting this checkbox. And then when I click the deploy button, it'll actually make that change in my production environment in Jira. So I can start by making all of the changes in Jira in my sandbox, and test everything out, make sure it's going to work the way I want it to work, and then I can selectively take some of those elements and push them from my sandbox up into my production environments. And when I'm done all that work, I can version control it. So I can commit each one of those changes into a Git history, and be able to go back to and look at old versions of the code. And we can actually take those old versions and deploy them back into Jira if we wanted to roll back. Since these Knuckle files are all just declarative representations of how a configuration should look, if we roll back to an older version of those, we're just saying to Jira, hey, this is how we want you to look. And so when we do a deployment, it'll tell us the difference between what it is and what you want it to be, and we can pick and choose which ones of those changes we want to re-implement, or all of them. And version control. Okay, there's a to-do. Okay, so we've also got Script Runner. I'm not sure if the audience out here are Script Runner fans, but if you are, you can get some early access to our Script Runner functionality, so we can actually manage Script Runner scripts in addition to all of the basic Jira stuff. And we're looking, we look carefully at add-ons that the community uses, and we look for opportunities if there are reasons to manage that as code, for example, where we look for opportunities to do that. So Script Runner is the first example of that, where we're, a lot of folks run Script Runner for workflow actions and post functions, I should say. And so we're able now to read in those scripts and manage those as scripts within the configuration code. Okay, I will leave you with a call to action, which is to go and try out our free tier. We actually do provide some of the functionality for free forever, and that's primarily around the fetch and the analysis of an individual Jira configuration. So great if you want to just hit your production environment and see what it looks like and look for dependencies and such. This free tier will allow you to do that, and it'll stay free forever. We might bug you once in a while to upgrade, but we'll keep that to a minimum as well. I think that's all I had for slides. I'd love to answer any questions and hang around and talk about how you all are managing your Jira instances now.
Sure. Well, thank you, Jeffrey. Any questions from anybody in the audience? I guess a question that I would have, you were mentioning the Script Runner scripts. Are there any other sort of key add-ons? I'm thinking like
let me get my pen, because I want to write them down.
Like along the lines of like advanced roadmaps or Jira Align, like those are sort of heavy customization, customizable systems.
Advanced roadmaps, and what was the other one? Jira Align?
Jira Align, yeah.
So neither of we've only got Script Runner as the add-ons we support currently, but we're looking for the community requirements, and we build them in as our customers say, this would be really valuable for us. Would you please do this? So
I know Roadmaps has a bit of an odd. It was portfolio. It was sort of an independent add-on, and then it sort of transitioned to be sort of baked into like Cloud Premium, and is now a standard feature of Dev.
Like Assets, right? Assets is another one we're working on. That's and that's not really an add-on anymore. We're considering that as a key part of Jira. So we're looking at building out support for Assets, which is called, what was it called? It used to be called Insights, I think it was. Now it's called Assets. Anyway, there's that. There's JSM. So we don't support the JSM native things like queues and stuff like that. But we do support managing a JSM-based Jira instance, giving you access to all the non-JSM objects, which is still super valuable. And JSM is something that's on the near-term roadmap for us as well.
Okay. And that includes JSM forms, or Ariel, you've got all.
Yeah, we're looking at that too. Yep, absolutely.
All right.
Let me write that one down too. JSM forms. Our product folks are always looking for like that community input as to what's important. So it's just another vote for JSM forms.
All right. Any other questions?
Kristen, any questions from you folks about how to manage your Jira instances?
I think like generally, like I kind of just inherited the Jira instance with 600 plus users, and I'm currently the only one who can do the changes. And we're looking for other like power users, previous
Oh
admins,
yeah.
so that
Mhm.
they can manage their own teams, or
Yep.
at least like the changes that they need immediately, they can do that.
Yep.
But it's like, do you have any tips on how that can be done? Like how to expand it so that like I won't be the only one burdened with all the needs of the organization?
And still have control, right? Like so
Exactly, exactly.
it's
Yes.
really great to have enable citizen developers, because like you say, it can take the load off of you, and they can develop the functionality that they need. On the other hand, there is a bit of a risk to across teams. For example, you have one citizen developer in one team and they make a change to a field, and that field has an impact on another team. That can become problematic. And so the recommendation would be to implement some control policies, and Salto can be a part of that, right? At the very least, in the free tier, there is that ability to do impact analysis. So you could give access to Salto to any number of the citizen developers and say, before you make a change to this field, could you please look at the dependencies and don't break anything. And then if you wanted to take it a step further, we could introduce like you could use Salto to give the citizen developers access to a sandbox environment, but still have the promotion done through you centrally, so that you could control and analyze what those promotions, what the changes are going to be, and ensure that the impact doesn't introduce any risk to running operations.
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds good. Can you talk a bit more about pricing?
Sure. Yeah. So pricing is on our website. So salto.io/pricing. Uh, um, and it's currently it's price per user. And I think that's changing for Jira. Let me just double check and see where we're at on that. If I look at Jira pricing.
And that's user of
Um,
actual Salto, not necessarily users on the.
well, that's what's changing. We're
Ah,
still kind of working on, let's see how many, yeah, it looks like we're on a per Jira user basis now. So we have made that change. But it's reasonably priced. I'm just putting in like 10,000 Jira users. Oh, okay. How about 5,000? Because it says we should do a pro. At 5,000 Jira users, it's going to come in at like $1,300 a month. So if you said you had 600 users, so that's like a $300 a month price tag for you. So that's a list price too.
Yeah, for me that makes sense, but sometimes like the organization, it
yeah.
needs to go through a lot of reviews, approval, and budgeting.
Yeah, certainly, and we can help with that process too. If you want to help with the cost justifications, we've done a lot of those, and we have some tools that allow us to, propose the justification for the cost.
And while I do a lot of the Atlassian administration in my organization, I do correspond with the teams that are responsible for Salesforce, and I don't believe they have anything along these lines. So,
Mhm.
is it a similar sort of pricing model there, or?
Yeah, I think it's not actually. It's in the Salesforce world. I believe it's still per Salto user.
Okay.
So it's $125 per user per month for the Pro environment. So it's slightly lesser version. It has everything you'll need. So it's $125 a month per user per month.
And
Minimum of 2 users.
and you mentioned that for Jira, you just changed it from Salto user to Jira users, like
Right.
in the environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Um. So for the Salto users, like
Mhm.
the screenshots that you showed, is that like web based
Yeah,
app?
it's a web-based
And
application. We have some time here, so maybe I'll just do a quick. Let's see here. Can I share an entire screen? Sure, let's do that. Share this. Here we go. Okay, so here's this is the application here. Can you see my screen?
Not
not
yet.
yet.
Okay, hang on. What did I mess up here? Okay, I can't access your screen. Oh, okay. I can't share my screen because of that. So hold on. I can share an individual tier thing here. So how about I go to, I'll just go here to share, and then I will, you can see my screen now?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah. So it's just app.salto.io. So here's the web-based application. So, you know, I have any number of you know, I've got a whole bunch of applications I'm connected to. So Jira and Zendesk and Salesforce. But if I just look at my Jira, I've got the production in the sandbox. So this is kind of how you access it. And so I would access the application via website. This is all running in Amazon, right? So it's on I think it's in the US East. So we fetch we run a fetch that connects to the application, downloads all of these elements, and updates them depending on what's changed. And we set this up through credentials. So I can change the credentials, right? So I tell it what Jira instance I want to connect to. I give it an email and a token. I can determine a couple different levels of access that they've got. Once I've kind of created those credentials, I can do my fetches. And if I'm allowed to, based on the user permissions, I can also do some comparisons and deployments. So I can take the you know, things that I want to compare. Here's a project. Say I want to deploy this project. It says you've got some dependencies. I gotta have to deploy this project category as well. So these are the kinds of things you can do to you know, deploy things up into your production environment. So this is kind of how it looks live.
Nice.
Thank you. And is there a limit to how many Salto users will have? So technically, all Jira users can access Salto, or because
no,
how
so
does
it'll give you a certain number of users. Yeah. So I think it's
based on?
yeah. So if we go back to pricing, that's pricing. Oopsie, salto.io/pricing. If you scroll down a little bit, you can see that there's these tabs. So in the Jira tab, it says how many users do you have. So we've got you know, 600, for example. And in Pro, you get up to 3 users on that. For enterprise, I forget the enterprise cost per month. It's a little more than this.
Yeah.
But that gives you as many users as you need with any number of environments, and you know, a few extra things as well. You get someone like me for your onboarding process. You can access not just Jira, the other ones as well. So there's some other things in here as well. So I'd say have a look at pricing, the pricing page. To kind of get a sense of what the pricing might be. And if you want, I mean, I can certainly, you know, my job is to reach out to folks like you and find out if there are opportunities for us to work together.
Thank you. Another question, like who are considered Salto users? So you mentioned earlier that you can kind of just view if there are dependencies. Like,
Right.
is that already considered a Salto user, or like just the ones that can push the changes?
Yeah, really good question. A Salto user is anyone who's able to log into Salto. So when you log into Salto, that's a user. We have some customers saying, "Hey, look, you know, there's some people who I don't really want to give a full user to. Can we license them for a read-only user, for example?" And we're thinking about something like that, but at the moment, it's everyone who logs into Salto would be considered a Salto user.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. I didn't mean for this to become a sales pitch. I'm so sorry.
All right. Well,
I would rather make this. Let's go back to like the what other kinds of value opportunities there are to share information, and then if you're interested, then by all means, let's connect. Maybe I'll reach out to you on LinkedIn, since we're all local in Vancouver. It's appropriate that I'll ping you on.
sure, please do.
Okay.
That's good.
Brendan, will you give me a list of the attendees so I can reach out?
Yeah,
should I
sure.
recommend
I'll
something?
send you a few. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay. So I'll Ariel, I'll reach out to you and we can start a conversation if if you think it's worthwhile. We can keep talking.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Brendan, like how many users do you have in your
We have about in and around 600 as well. So
Are you the only person managing it?
for the most part, and there's a few other people that sometimes make changes, but I don't know. I don't necessarily want them to.
Yeah, yeah. How do you handle it? Like, how do you try to, not be the only one doing it, or is it more strict that you have to go? You should do the changes.
Yeah, I mean, I just run it all basically myself as best as possible. I'm trying to post cloud migration sort of have a steering committee where we can sort of like get individuals from a wide swath of the organization and try to determine what is most important, what problems are the biggest facing us, and what changes uh, we most eagerly need. And something like Salto seems like it would be very helpful in terms of being able to spin up those changes on a sandbox environment and then push them to production without a lot of extra heavy lifting. So that's my own interest in it.
Yeah, cool. I'll reach out to you too then, Brennan.
Sure, please do. Yeah.
And Jeff, like, do you know? Because I can remember I talked to someone during Team 23 in the
Oh, yes.
app day, and I cannot remember which company it is. It was basically it was the same premise, but I cannot remember which it was. But like, do you know? Probably, but what makes you sorry?
We were at Teams. Is it you mean the Teams event in Vegas or wherever it was?
Yes. But like I talked to a particular someone in the app day, which was hosted by Adaptivist, I think.
Oh yeah,
And
sure.
like I'm not sure if you were there as well, if it's the same company, because I cannot remember the name.
No.
But it's the
I'm not
same
gonna tell
concept.
No,
It's the
there's
same concept. So maybe I'm interested in like what makes you stand out too with other competitors that offer the same.
Yeah. So
Um,
AppFire has a couple of tools. I think it's called AppFire. They have a Jira, configuration manager for Jira, CMJ, and they have another one. There's actually two tools by the same company. I think they acquired both of them, and it's actually kind of confusing as to which one you should use. They have a little website about, or a little Q&A about when you should use one or the other. I think that we are dedicated to this process. AppFire themselves, they have a pile of tools and they've acquired them all. And CMJ is a nice little tool; it works fine, but it's not multi-app. I haven't played with it much, so I can't say how it, if we just look Jira to Jira, how we stand up. But my sense is that we take this as a lot more seriously because of we're building this for multiple applications. We're really kind of trying to get under the hood as to creating these DevOps processes. We're working with the industry to figure out how DevOps should work when we're talking about business applications, because it's a little different than in the world of software development. So we're kind of really in there with the thought leadership, and we're driving our products very, very heavily because we've got that critical mass. Besides just Jira, we've got lots of other applications that are all contributing revenue and possible future revenue, which gets us as a company excited. So we're really investing a lot to develop the functionality. So I think we're going to be going faster, and I think if you looked at our product side by side, I think we'd come out on top. I would love to get feedback on that if I'm wrong.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a little over 10 minutes left. I did have a deck sort of dedicated to in the team updates. I know that Ariel, you were at team, obviously. I don't know. I'm happy to go through that, but if people have already seen and know about things like Jira Product Discovery and whiteboards, Confluence whiteboards, and so on and so forth. We don't necessarily need to dive into that if it's material you've already seen.
Maybe Kristen can say if she has attended or not.
Okay. All right. Well then, if there's nothing else, maybe we can wrap it there. But thank you very much, Jeffrey, for coming and sharing. Very interesting. And greatly appreciate you dialing in for over your lunchtime there.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you, folks.
Yeah.